Hey guys, I'm Naya and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about budget decks for this next format. We have a lot to talk about, so it's best if we go ahead and get started immediately. We have a couple honorable mentions though, and I would also really like to know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. I want to know what you guys are going to be playing in the next format, and if it is a budget deck, please let us know so more people can pick it up if they want. So as for the honorable mentions, first I wanted to mention Dinos. And it's only an honorable mention because the support that's been announced is not out yet and it's not going to be for some time. So their support is nice. It's actually really good for the deck. However, the deck still has some issues, and I think the issues with consistency are always going to be present. So we'll see how that support helps. But right now, with that support still out of the question, I still wanted to mention it as an honorable mention because Litosagem came back to 3 on the last ban list. So Litosagem can now see play at 3 together with babies, which is really nice and was always good in Dinos. However, you still have different ways of approaching the deck. You can play it going first, going second. You don't even need to include the Chukings if you don't want to. But the deck still has power. Even though it's a bit inconsistent and Miscellaneousaurus is only at 1, it's still able to establish quite strong boards going first and also put a token on the Kashtira player's side so they cannot special summon their monsters immediately, which is really cool. And also going second, you're able to achieve the OTK very easily because all in all, Dino is a strong going second deck. Some people just tend to play it going first, which is also fine. And if you play it going first and you're able to survive and you're able to establish some things, it's going to be much easier to OTK on turn 3 since you have set up from before. And going second, you can just play going second cards, and the Ultimate Conductor Tyranno is still one of the top boss monsters, at least in my opinion. It's insanely strong, and being able to set the cards, that's a very strong effect right now. So there is a lot going for Dino. The inconsistency is still there. However, it's a cool honorable mention. And together with that, I also have 2 other decks as honorable mentions. And it's going to be Naturia and Striker. And it's an honorable mention because those decks are best paired together with Runic. And as we all know, Runic is not exactly a budget engine. Cards are going up, which was almost obvious because the Ishizu Shufflers went away, so it's not that bad anymore to play Fountain. However, the Kashtira Birth can still banish your cards, so you aren't getting your draws, but Runic is seeing more play than it was before. And paired together with Naturia and Sky Striker, it's basically able to give those decks more power and just more resources. And with you drawing a bunch of things and getting to your engine is just paired together perfectly with those two, because with Naturia you're going to be able to make some extra deck monsters because the Camellia is a tuner and you're able to summon monsters with Runics as well. And then you pair that together with the disruptions that the Naturia cards provide, and you have much more advantage over your opponent with the additional draws you're getting and the additional Runic cards you have as backbone to your strategy. The deck was hurt a tiny bit with Ishizu cards being limited because they did a lot with Mudora, for example, being able to search Gravekeeper's Trap, which is then able to go for Earth Fairies. Like you had, things in engine that just worked together with the Ishizu cards, not just them being the busted Ishizu cards. You had more than that. Now they're at 1, which sucks for that deck. However, with the Runic version, I think it's very strong, but Runic is expensive, and it's pretty much the same for Sky Striker. I think it is strong. It has a very unique playstyle. It's almost not playing any monsters, maybe like a Ray or something, so you don't really get that hurt by zone locking, which is very important, and it's just able to grind the opponent down to literally 0 resources. It's a hard deck to play, and even harder deck to master, and a pure Sky Striker might be an option, but with Runic, it's much better. So those would be the honorable mentions. Runic is a bit more expensive to acquire, but I still think it's an engine that's probably worth picking up just altogether because it's very, very strong in so many different archetypes. So you can just have it and have it ready to play in different decks if you want, because you're going to invest in it once and then just keep it. But you can just wait for a reprint later down the line, although I'm not sure when we are going to be getting one since it was printed in a side set. So there's that's something to think about. But going over our actual decks, I think we have 6 decks to cover today. The first one is going to be Plunder. Something I need to point out is that the Plunder core is extremely cheap. That's why it's included in the budget decks. But you have 2 engines that are much more expensive that are going to see play in the Plunder deck, and one is a bit cheaper than the other, which is the Punk stuff. So Punk can be played together with Plunder because you're going for genetic level 8 synchros. But Foxy Tune is about $30 per copy. So with the Plunder core being that cheap, you are still spending about $100 for the entire deck. So it's not bad if you're investing in Punk cards. But you also have another engine, which is the adventure stuff, which is much more expensive. And it is seeing play in Plunder as well because it's able to protect your plays. It's really nice in the deck. It's not mandatory, but it's cool to use. So it's pretty much up to you what you want to be doing, what you want to be investing in. But why is Plunder even a thing right now? Like I mentioned, with the support, Plunder was able to basically give itself more plays. Before, it was just a deck that was reliant on the opponent a lot because you would be able to special summon your extra deck ships, your monsters, based on their attributes of monsters in the graveyard or on the field. So you would be dependent on what kind of deck you were facing to summon your ships. But with Konami printing more and more ships, you suddenly have almost every single attribute accessible. But it was still a bit tougher to go up against like Flunder, for example, like a wind attribute deck or something like that. And now with the new support card, you're able to give yourself a token, give the opponent a token, and basically give plays to yourself because you decide the token's attribute. So the deck received support, it's seeing play with Punk, with Adventure, and just has enough space for any kind of tech card you may want to adjust to the format. So it's a really nice deck to pick up, I think. It's very rewarding if you play it well. And like I said, the core is extremely cheap, so you can just decide for yourself whatever you want to do moving forward. The next deck I wanted to mention is another one that was kind of bad before the support, which is Springans. Springans is it's very interesting. It's basically a deck that's able to establish very strong boards. And with the support card, the Tally-Ho Springans, you're able to search for a Springans monster and also special summon up to 3 monsters from the hand or graveyard, depending on how many materials you detached from an Xyz monster, if any, when the card was activated. So it's very strong. It's able to just spam out bodies, and the boards you would end up on would be something along the lines of Naturia Extario. There's IP and Gym Buster, and there's also a bit more expensive engine, which is the Therians. You're able to pair the Therians together with the deck. But the Therian King Regulus is about $40 per copy, so again, it's more expensive. It's not exactly as cheap as the Springans core would be. And you can also pair it together with branded stuff if you want, which is much cheaper, and you're able to play just a package of Branded Fusion, Mirror, Jade, and just those cards, which are extremely easy to pick up together with the Springans. So you're able to get a cheap deck which establishes nice boards. And for the next deck, we're going to be covering Sword Soul. So I'll quickly go over Sword Soul because I tend to mention them a lot when it comes to budget decks with their reprints. That the last ones were in Magnificent Mavens. They received a bunch of reprints. Cards are extremely easy to pick up, and the deck has always been strong, but it declined in popularity with Bestios and Ishizu Shufflers running around, and with Tier 0 Ishizu tier limits, the power level was just way too big when it comes to that deck, and people just, they stepped away from Sword Soul, which is fair for that point in time. However, right now, with those cards being gone, you're able to utilize Tenius to the best of their ability, and overall, the deck is able to establish a nice board, which is just different types of disruption that are also very good against Kashtira. You have your double pop, you have a negate that's like a Veiler type of negate in Chi-Shao. You're also putting up Baron, and you're also probably having some hand traps because the deck has enough space to run a bunch of tech cards. So if you put all of that on the board, you're probably surviving, and then you can easily OTK because it's what the deck has always been able to do. You just need to see how to go about it, and I think that's where the skill comes in when it comes to Sword Soul. It is one of those decks that seems like it has very streamlined plays, which it does. However, the decision making is very important when it comes to that deck. It's a very rewarding deck to play, and it's insanely easy to pick up, and also a very good deck, and one that I would recommend if you're getting into the game. And I always say that, but it's literally what Sword Soul is. So if you're trying to pick up a cheap deck, Sword Soul would probably be the way to go. And for the next deck, we're going to be discussing Ninjas. So Ninjas are very interesting. It's an old deck that has been out for the archetype has been around for some time, but right now they're going to be seeing competitive play as well, which is very exciting because of their support. So the deck was played as a bit more combo oriented, or a combo version was played, but now it's also seeing very control-like play, and I like that version a lot. I was researching it, and it just seemed insanely interesting. You're basically putting up not a scary board at all, you know. It's just a monster, a couple cards set, but then you also can play hand traps to further stop the opponent. But basically what you're doing is you are summoning the ninjas during the opponent's turn with the ninjutsu art cards, and then you're able to disrupt them. You're able to take away their resources, set their cards, get rid of them, and just continue chipping away at their stuff. So if you like a control style deck, I think Ninja would be for you. It seems very fun. It seems very interesting. And it seems like because it can go in either direction, combo, control, you can just pick it up because it's insanely cheap and then you can do whatever you want with it. It's also one of those decks that might be a bit, weird when you're going up against it because people are unfamiliar with it. So there's the surprise factor in it as well. And they just excite me. I'm interested in ninjas. So there's that. And for the next deck, we're going to be talking about Drytron. So why Drytron fell off was obviously because of Bestios, with the light monsters being in the graveyard. And you are not exactly good yet with Kashtira Birth. I'll always be mentioning Kashtira Birth because it's important to think about. It's like one of those effects where people sort of skip over it. But it's very strong. And it does disrupt Drytron as well, not just Runic, what we talked about before. So there's still the downside, but it's very, very cheap. And it's also able to establish very strong boards. Like you are going for the Dynamondo combo with Magician of Black Chaos Max. You have the searchable Herald of Orange Light. You're putting up Herald of Perfection. You have the Herald Blink. There's a lot of Herald stuff. You have the searchable Lancia, which is strong against Kashtira. You have enough space to play some tech cards. Going second might be a bit tougher, but Drytron has always been one of those decks that is much easier to pair together with power spells, and right now those kinds of tech cards are a bit more strong than hand traps in my opinion. And also you can diversify your disruptions by playing the magic-y stuff as well to prevent going second cards from hindering you. So there is a lot going for Drytron. There is the Bestios, of course, because they didn't exactly stop seeing play altogether. So in some decks, they still see play, and they still see play in some people's side decks. So it's important to think about that because Drytron might not actually be such a great choice if Bestios see a lot of play moving forward. But we're just going to have to wait and see. And another card that is kind of an issue, of course, is Droll. I think it has a ton of potential, and a lot of people are starting to notice it and talk about it because it does shut down the top decks, and that's very, very important. And if people pick it up, and if Droll sees play a lot, then Drytron is probably not going to be able to stand a chance. So there's sadly that as well, but it is cheap to pick up if you want it. And the last deck on this list, I wanted to mention Bird Up. It's the last one on this list and has some downsides. It does seem a bit less powerful than some of the other decks. And also the Kashtira zone locking matters a lot. I think it's very important where you summon your stuff so you don't take away your own link pointers and all of that. And if your opponent thinks and locks the correct zone, you're going to have a hard time playing. And it just seems like a deck that can way too easily be hit by just one impermanence and just stopped. So there's that as well. It does have some stuff going for it, but there's other things as well. So I wanted to mention both sides so you know and you can decide for yourself. But it is still nice. It's not a bad deck. It's able to establish a board of Apollousa, Revolt, the Lyrilusc Xyz. You have a bounce. There's a lot of things if you get to that point, which might not be that easy if you get disrupted with hand traps, because you're not always going to be opening the perfect hand with Karas and Bird Call and Tinky and all of that. With 3 Tinky, that's cool. You have a bit more consistency, and you can also play 2 Recital Starling, of course, since now it's a 2. But there are some downsides to the deck. So I wanted to mention it. It's still an option for you. But yeah, I think among all of these decks on this list, you are probably going to be able to find something for you. There is a ton of budget decks. That's the last thing I want to say before we end this video. There are so many budget decks right now because the format is going to be quite diverse, and that's what's been going on since forever probably. They're going for 1 to 2 deck formats, diverse format, 1 to 2 to 3 deck format, tier 0 format, diverse format. And right now, to me, that's kind of sad, but we got to the diverse format part of things again, which I'm not a huge fan of. But what I'm trying to say is you have a ton of options out there for you. So I'm sure you can find a deck that you like. And I hope that videos like this one help you. And I want to know your thoughts and opinions, like I said before, in the comments down below. I would love to hear from you guys. And of course, if you like this video overall, please make sure to like it and make sure to sub to the channel so you don't miss out on anything that I post. And please check out all the social media. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.